Second memo exposing deep state corruption. Now, Senators Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham have released a heavily redacted yet very revealing copy of their criminal referral against Christopher Steele. Now, these revelations are beyond stunning and continue to prove the Clinton campaign and the Obama administration were working together to target the Trump campaign. Here are the findings from this new memo. This is just released today, not the old memo on Friday. We got to keep up here. Now, Senators Grassley and Graham write this, that while working on a second dossier, Steele was being fed information from the Obama State Department and from Clinton allies. The memo then reads and goes on, quote, one memorandum by Mr. Steele that was not published by BuzzFeed is dated October 19, 2016. The report alleges redacted, as well as redacted. Mr. Steele's memorandum states that his company received this report from redacted U.S. State Department, and that the report was the second in a series, and that the report was information that came from a foreign subsource who is in touch with a contact of redacted, a friend of the Clintons who passed it to redacted. And it's troubling enough that the Clinton campaign funded Mr. Steele's work, but that these Clinton associates were contemporaneously feeding Mr. Steele's allegations. It raises huge additional concerns about his credibility. Now, let me slow down here. In addition to Hillary Clinton buying and paying a bought and paid for $12+ million phony fake news Russian propaganda dossier to influence the election, if that's not bad enough, you have now Clinton associates and the Obama State Department funneling allegations for a second dossier to Christopher Steele. Now, watch the second part in terms of the new memo that came out today. Now, on the face of the dossier, it appears that Mr. Steele gathered much of his information, let's do this really slow, from Russian government sources inside of Russia. And according to the law firm Perkins Coie, Mr. Steele's dossier-related efforts were funded through Fusion GPS by that law firm on behalf of the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign. So the senators are saying that Steele was using Russian sources to help them smear then candidate and later on incoming President Donald Trump. And the second memo is also accusing Christopher Steele of lying to either the FBI or to the British courts. They write, quote, there is substantial evidence suggesting that Mr. Steele materially misled the FBI about a key aspect of his dossier efforts, one which bears on his credibility. As if we didn't know. Now, this new memo out tonight also details how Christopher Steele was briefing several mainstream media outlets, fake news outlets, in the summer and the fall of 2016 about his first fake news dossier. Now, according to the British court records, Steele briefed the New York Times, the Washington Post, Yahoo News, the New Yorker, and, of course, the old network fake news CNN at the end of September 2016 about the dossier that we know is full of lies. So Steele was feeding the Destroy Trump media lies directly from Russia. And we also know from Fusion GPS co-founder Glenn Simpson and his congressional testimony that the Clinton campaign and the DNC were aware that his company was contacting media outlets about the dossier. They're all working together. So let me repeat. Tonight, we now have two memos, one from Friday and one from tonight, and now news of a second. We'll call it a dossier. Now, as we told you on Friday, this new information, I told you Friday, it's only 15%. It's only the tip of the iceberg. Now, according to reports, the House Intelligence Committee Chairman, Devin Nunes, he could release more reports, as many as 4. We'll ask him tonight. He will join us exclusively on this program, responding to the new memo that is out. And Senator Chuck Grassley and Senator Graham, they're trying to get more of what's in their memo declassified. They're asking the FBI for an emergency review of the criminal referral. And also brand new tonight on Hannity, the House Intelligence Committee did vote to release the Democrats' counter memo to the public. And sources have been telling us tonight that Congressman Adam Schiff, the Democratic ranking member in the House Intelligence Committee, he is outright lying to the American people about what is in the Democrats' counter to the Nunes memo. Gets confusing, but it makes sense. Now, Schiff also appears to be leaking classified information. Let's watch this.
It is relevant information to alert the FISA court. Is there a political motivation? Was there a political actor involved? And the court was notified a political actor was involved, and that's part of the misleading nature of the FISA application. In terms of the identity of the political actor, the most important information for the court is, what did Christopher Steele know? And Glenn Simpson has testified that Christopher Steele was not told the identity of the lawyer or the party behind the lawyer. That's the most important information evaluating Christopher Steele's bias.
Hey, Adam, did you tell the court, was the court told that this was bought and paid for by the Clintons and the DNC? That's why Schiff is wrong on so many different levels. Now, sources are telling us tonight that contrary to whatever fiction Schiff is peddling, the FISA court was lied to. They were never told when the FBI was getting and then renewing this warrant to spy on former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. Those same sources are telling us tonight that Schiff's claim about the court being informed that the dossier was politically tainted, it is a minor footnote. It never mentions that Hillary and her campaign and the DNC paid for it. Oh, a pretty important omission, don't you think? And we can also report tonight, according to our sources who have seen this Democratic memo, that nothing in the memo actually refutes any of the facts that were presented in the House GOP intel memo, which, by the way, we told you on Friday. And the FBI said there's nothing factually inaccurate about it. So here's what the left and your corrupt media won't tell you tonight. The FISA judge was never told, never, that Hillary Clinton was paying for that phony Russian dossier, Russian intelligence lies about Donald Trump, first trying to influence an election and then using it to get a warrant to spy on an opposition candidate. The Democratic memo has not been declassified yet, and Schiff is going around telling anybody who will listen what's in it. In other words, he's leaking classified information. Now, President Trump is blasting, rightly so, Schiff on Twitter, writing earlier today, little Adam Schiff, who is desperate to run for higher office, is one of the biggest liars and leakers in Washington, right up there with Comey and Warner and Brennan and Clapper. And Adam leaves closed committee hearings to illegally leak confidential information. This should and must be stopped. I actually disagree with President Trump. Schiff is actually auditioning. He wants a job at Conspiracy TV, MSNBC. Kind of like Comey's assistant just got hired by fake news CNN. Now, another breaking news tonight. This is important. Sarah Carter reporting that Schiff is leading a media campaign along with former Obama administration officials and Democrats to attack Congressman Devin Nunes and the 4-page memo. Now, this fierce opposition is not surprising because everyone involved in this deep state effort to spy on the Trump campaign and to damage and destroy a duly elected president, as of tonight, I can promise you they are all scared out of their minds because they are being exposed. Now, here's what Democrats and these high-ranking officials, well, they don't want you to know about that details in the Nunes memo, and here are the major revelations. We learned this Friday. Former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe testified before Congress that without the dossier, the FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign, Carter Page, never would have been approved. By the way, I have sources confirming that is true tonight. And the FISA judge was never told that the dossier was bought and paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. A huge omission, Mr. Schiff. And James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, Dana Bente, Rod Rosenstein, they're all complicit in this because they at different points all approved the surveillance. And the FBI then used this Yahoo News article written by Michael Isikoff about a Carter Page trip to Russia to corroborate the phony dossier. The problem with that is the source for the story for Isikoff was Christopher Steele. So the FBI never corroborated the information from two independent sources, and they presented it to the judge like it was two sources corroborating the same thing. That was never the case. Now, as it relates to Steele, he was also suspended and terminated as an FBI source for leaking to the media. And the memo also exposes how the demoted DOJ official, Bruce Orr, he maintained a close relationship with Steele. And we know that Bruce Orr had an office just 4 doors down from Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. And we know Orr's wife, Nellie, was working for Fusion GPS. Nellie was hired specifically, well, to build that Trump dossier. In other words, she was kind of paid by the Clintons, if you really look at it logically. And as the Daily Caller points out, it sure does seem like Fusion GPS was trying to buy influence in the Obama State Department. And Bruce Orr revealed that during September 2016, Steele said he was, quote, desperate that Donald Trump not get elected, was passionate about him not being president. Now, the memo also exposes how during the initial application for the FISA warrant, then the head of the FBI's counter-intel division said the corroboration of the Steele dossier was in, quote, its infancy stage. In other words, they knew they hadn't verified this. So you have an unverified, Clinton bought and paid for dossier brought before a judge. They don't tell the judge it's Clinton bought and paid for, and they don't tell the judge it wasn't verified. This is outrageous. Now, we've also found out from Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson, he never bothered to verify the document. So the FBI lied in that sense to the FISA court judge. They never told him the truth. They never mentioned the dossier was bought and paid for by Clinton and the DNC. They used the dossier filled with Russian lies, as we now learned in today's second memo, as a justification to spy on the Trump campaign and then an incoming president. What does that mean? That means America's powerful tools of intelligence were unlawfully weaponized in one of the biggest abuse of powers in the history of this country. And the media is ignoring it, and FISA laws were manipulated by top-ranking officials. By the way, I want to be clear. We love all you FBI special agents. We love the guys in the intelligence community, the rank and file, the people that save our lives every day and put your lives on the line. We're not talking about rank and file. What we're talking about here are the upper echelon that we're trying to undermine, first a candidate and then a duly elected president of the United States. Think about this. James Comey testified under oath. The dossier was salacious and unverified, that he told that to the incoming president. Yet Comey signed 3 FISA applications that relied heavily on the dossier even before he told Trump that it was salacious and not verified. Why would Comey do that? Now, Comey needs to be hauled right back before Congress and answer very important questions we put on the side of your screen. Now, Comey's been more than happy to tweet out his feelings every day. He's writing a book. He'll probably be a TV pundit at CNN or MSNBC any day. He's willing to talk. So, Mr. Comey, Jim, why don't you go before Congress and answer a lot of these important questions? Here's another important point. The entire Russia investigation, they say, was started because of a drunken conversation. Former Trump advisor, I knew the Trump campaign, never heard of George Papadopoulos. The president said he never heard of him, that he had at a London bar with an Australian diplomat. That was in May. Then, according to the narrative, 2 months later, when Democratic emails started leaking, Australian officials then took that information, passed it on to American intelligence agents. So apparently the threshold to launch an investigation into an American citizen through the FISA court is that low. All you need is an FBI. All they need is a drunken 4-way hearsay. Are you kidding me? Here with reaction to breaking news and breaking news herself tonight, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Sarah, let's start with your breaking news tonight, and then we'll go through the list here.
Well, Sean, I think, first of all, the memorandum and the criminal referral that was released today by Senator Grassley, according to a number of sources that I've spoken with, just even as before I got on the show with you tonight, they say that Senator Grassley is literally right above the target. Imagine if 95% of this criminal referral was not redacted, what we would see. What we know now is that Christopher Steele was in contact with friends of Hillary Clinton and persons at the State Department, that he was being fed allegations on President Trump through these associates of Clinton, and that he put together a second dossier. This is stunning because not only did he include some of that information from the second dossier in the dossier that was used to obtain the FISA application, but we know now that some of these allegations actually came from people close to Hillary Clinton. This was very political. It shows, according to the sources.
Wait a minute. So friends of Hillary Clinton are giving Christopher Steele information. Walk it from there. And then that information is used to create a phony dossier confirmed by Clinton friends, and then that's used for a FISA warrant, and the FISA judge isn't told Clinton paid for it.
So I think this is what's so compelling here. The argument on the Democratic side and former Obama administration officials is that Russia somehow colluded with the Trump administration. But all the evidence shows that Christopher Steele, a foreign British agent, by the way, he's a foreign agent.
I thought it was bad for foreign agents to influence our election, Sarah.
Yeah,
I read that somewhere. I heard that on fake news CNN.
Yeah, so not only do we have, a British agent, but the British agent is now gathering evidence and information, alleged evidence and information from Russians to put in this dossier. And not only that, he's also in contact with Clinton allies who are also feeding him allegations. And somehow he's using those allegations to buttress off of the Russians in order to compile a dossier that isn't verified.
Let me go to all this new news. There's a lot to download here. All right, so I have in front of me, I have the Grassley, the new memo out tonight. It actually says here, Greg, Mr. Steele gathered much of his information from Russian government sources inside of Russia. Then it goes on to say that the FBI director testified before the Senate Select Committee June 2017. He told the incoming president-elect, that it was salacious and unverified. But months before, didn't he use that dossier in part? Yeah. Wasn't it used by Comey?
How can Comey admit that it's unverified and salacious and a fabrication, and then sign under penalty of perjury an affidavit using that same document, the dossier, to get a search warrant to spy on Trump associates? You're right. Comey needs to answer that question. But look, this is really the definition of government corruption. They knew it was a false document, but they used it anyway.
But that's the point. They knew it was false. They knew it, and they purposely misled the judge, didn't they?
And they used it to open the Trump-Russia collusion case in July of 2016. They didn't have a legal basis to do it. If you look up the law, it's very strict. The FBI has to do two things. They have to identify a potential crime. They had none. Collusion's not a crime. And second of all, they have to have what are called substantial articulable facts. A fabricated document is not that.
So if Hillary's people, and we know who they are, Sarah, you know who they are, and I know who they are you going to mention them tonight?
Yes, I think we should. I mean, there's already been reports out there. It's Cody Shear, and he was a former journalist, and he was a very close ally of the Clintons. He worked with then President Bill Clinton in his administration. There's also Sidney Blumenthal.
Sid Vicious is back. Shocking.
Shocking. I remember I wrote about that several weeks ago in a report that I filed. So there are a lot of connections here and a lot of questions that need to be answered. There's also another name, Jonathan Winter, who is the special envoy for Libya at the State Department, and that's very interesting because Christopher Steele was a foreign asset. I mean, they used him.
Let me go back to the law here. So we have two memos. Two dossiers, if you will. But there was the first dossier was 16 separate memos. So we have then a second effort by Steele. Steele also leaking all this crap with coordination, according to Glenn Simpson, to media outlets in this country.
And lying to the FBI about it.
And lying to the FBI. So you have Clinton's feeding the dossier, the phony dossier, and also fake Russian information. And then that is used as a means to spy on an incoming, to stop a president from getting elected and then an incoming campaign.
Yeah, it would be abuse of power and perjury on the part of the DOJ and the FBI. I want to mention one other thing. I now have two highly placed sources who say that on January 10th, about 3 weeks ago, Rod Rosenstein threatened to subpoena the calls and texts of members of Congress because he was, quote unquote, tired of dealing with the Intel Committee. That, if true, is obstruction of justice by Rod Rosenstein.
Hey, Greg, Chuck Schumer said it. They'll get you 6 ways in Sunday. And then the guy on CNN making another threat. We'll get to that later. Thank you both. We're way behind. Devin Nunes is going to join us.
One reason that kind of stuns me is obviously the information that I got from Christopher Steele, and we'll talk about that, was information the FBI already had. My story is about the FBI's own investigation. So it seems a little odd that they would be citing the Yahoo News story about the matter that they are investigating themselves based on the same material that had been separately presented to the FBI before I was ever briefed by Christopher Steele.
All right, that was Michael Isikoff late last week revealing his shock that the Yahoo News report was used as evidence to justify a FISA warrant against Carter Page. Tonight, the House Intelligence Committee, as we mentioned earlier, voted to release the Democrats' memo. It now goes to the president. Here with reaction to all of this, the man himself. He is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Devin Nunes. You got a great vote of support from the president and frankly from me and anybody that believes in government transparency. And in the lead up to your memo, of sources and methods, and this is dangerous and unprecedented, there was nothing given here that would have hurt our intelligence in any way. Correct, sir?
That's right, Sean. And I think that was Isikoff the tape you just ran, and that is very illuminating because that is absolute now confirmation that we know that Steele was put in front of reporters. You have the reporter himself admitting it. This is big news. I actually caught some of this last week and tweeted it out. But this is what the FBI used to corroborate the dossier, which is very, very dangerous, to take political dirt that was paid for by the Hillary campaign and use it against your political opponents, have the FBI use it and open up an investigation.
In the beginning of the memo, and you actually go through that this raises concerns to the legitimacy and legality of certain DOJ, FBI interactions with the FISA court and represent a troubling breakdown of the legal process that was established to protect the American people. So this is what's serious about it. Now, in your memo, you went through great detail to say that in the FISA application and subsequent renewals 4 times, they never informed the FISA court that, in fact, this money really came from the Clinton campaign and the DNC. In other words,
that's right, and more so, they never informed the court that Christopher Steele was meeting with journalists. I think the court would have known that. One of the things that we're going to do this week is we're going to send a letter to the court. We don't know if we'll be successful or not, but we're going to try to ask the court whether or not they will provide the transcripts of the 4 proceedings. It would be very interesting if we could get those transcripts to know exactly what was presented verbally to the court and to see if that was transcribed.
Okay, this is really important here because if they knew, we know it was not verified. As a matter of fact, you even put in your memo that the FBI themselves, they said they were in only the initial stages of verification. So they would present something that was unverified that we know was paid for by one political party to create a warrant against another party during an election and then a president-elect.
Yeah, and I think the bigger problem and challenge here is that the mainstream media is totally uninterested in this. Can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and Donald Trump or George Bush or Karl Rove had paid for information and then George W. Bush's FBI had opened an investigation into the Obama campaign because they were talking to Russians, which, by the way, really did happen. The Obama campaign was talking to Russians back in 2008 and opened up a counterintelligence investigation using dirt dug up and paid for by the RNC and George W. Bush supporters. This town would be on fire. Every reporter would be following around Karl Rove and George W. Bush all over town. Yet it's crickets from the media. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. I mean, I'm almost flabbergasted because I thought at least there would be some ounce of credibility left, but there really is none.
And ultimately, Steele, again, unverified. If we look at the memo that came out of Chuck Grassley's committee earlier today, it actually goes on to say that Steele gathered much of his information from Russian government sources inside of Russia. So if I put the 2 memos together, and the new one tonight, yours from Friday, Hillary Clinton paid for Russian propaganda, turned out to be lies, not verified, then used for a FISA warrant. And I'm like, not only was it paid for to manipulate and lie to the American people, but then to spy on an opposition party candidate. Sir, are there crimes committed here?
Well, you can't really make this up. I hope the listeners understood what you just said. We have a clear link to Russia. You have a campaign who hired a law firm, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired a foreign agent who went and got information from the Russians on the other campaign. It seems like the counterintelligence investigation should have been opened up against the Hillary campaign when they got a hold of the dossier. But that that didn't happen either. So, and you mentioned Senator Grassley. I will have to tell you, Senator Grassley's done a phenomenal job here, Sean. I mean, a lot of people have given myself and my committee a lot of credit for the work that we've dug up, but I can tell you that Senator Grassley has been phenomenal through this whole process, and I think he deserves a lot of credit.
And this guy, Christopher Steele, is a guy that has was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being the president. So he has his own political motivation in all of this.
And Sean, that also was not presented to the court.
Well, I mean, and I know the Democrats are putting it out. My sources are telling me tonight that they don't even question this in the Democratic side. That all they're saying is, well, on the FISA application, there might have been a footnote that said there might be some political tainting, and that's it. They told nothing about Christopher Steele, nothing about being paid for by Clinton. None of this came out to the court. Isn't that deliberately deceiving a court, Congressman?
Well, not only that, but it's the continued obfuscation that the Democrats have continued to do throughout this investigation is leak something out to a press that is basically part of their own team. They run a story that's based on something partially true, and then they come back and accuse us of doctoring up a document. So I just go by the old rule, whatever they accuse you of doing, they're actually doing.
And it's even worse.
We know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say, part of the reason why we know that we're right is because the relentless attacks on me, Trey Gowdy. I mean, they even go as far in their memo. They attack Trey Gowdy and myself in their memo, and they come to conclusions. And what did they say for 10 days? They said that our memo came to all sorts of conclusions. Our memo didn't come to any conclusions. Our memo just listed facts. And their memo, people will see, they actually come to conclusions and and have personal attacks on myself and Chairman Gowdy, which is really silly.
It's sort of like them saying, well, you never saw the underlying documents, but only one Republican was allowed to see it. So you sent the lawyer Trey Gowdy, and that's where the information came from. I'm very interested because at the heart of this, you really have Nellie Orr, Bruce Orr's wife. If you really get down to the bottom line, she's being paid by the Clinton campaign because she's working for Fusion GPS that is building the dossier against Donald Trump. But I want to ask you about this. The Deputy Director McCabe and his testifying before the committee in December 2017 that there would be no warrant without the dossier. Now, my sources have told me that he was asked the question numerous times in varying ways, and Democrats have questioned the authenticity of that or correctness of that. But I was told that his answer is even worse.
Yeah, I would say it's more spin. Okay, this is what they do. They tell a half truth. So we put in a summation of 8 hours of testimony. Trey Gowdy actually interviewed him for 15 hours, and we did a short summation in one sentence. What is the major revelation that we discovered with Mr. McCabe? That is that without the dossier, then they would have never been able to go to the FISA court and get a warrant. That's the point. But we were not going to release executive session transcripts in this. There was no need for it. So we surmised 8 hours trying to keep this very, very small so that we weren't getting into any sources and methods. But anyway, this is going to continue to happen, and we just have to continue to play the game with them. Unfortunately, that they will continue to drop out little pieces of phony information, and we have to try to correct the record.
Well, you said there's about 4 more memos coming. A lot more is coming, correct, sir?
Yeah. So let me on that. So I think there's a little confusion. So we have a broad investigation going into DOJ and FBI for FISA abuse and other matters. This is a very broad investigation looking at a number of different areas. People should not get confused that we're going to do more memos in the sense of the 11G process that we followed here in the House, but we do have an ongoing investigation which we made public on Friday into the State Department and some of those abuses, and that's active. And then there's several other stages of our investigation, but the State Department one is coming closer to a conclusion.
All right, when we come back, we'll have more with Congressman Devin Nunes right after the break. And then later, the great one, Mark Levin, weighs in on all of this. That's straight ahead. Looking again at the the memo that was sent out by Chuck Grassley today. In other words, the second memo here. And again, I want to reiterate for our audience, it literally says Steele gathered his information from Russian government sources inside of Russia. Then it goes on to say, Mr. Steele, in litigation, it appears he either lied to the FBI or to the British courts, or the classified documents reviewed by the committee contain materially false statements. Then it says this. The timeline here is important about James Comey. It says, former FBI director, in June of 2017, James Comey publicly, before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, he had said that he briefed President-elect Trump, this is at Trump Tower, and he told him and described the dossier as salacious and unverified. Now, that's long after Comey signed off on that information being used as a foundation to get the FISA warrant. So would either he handed to the court something he believed was unverified and salacious, or he gave it credibility when they got the initial FISA warrant? Which is it? Do you see a conflict there like I do?
Well, I think the conflict that you're describing, which no one on the left seems to care about, or the mainstream media, is that political dirt was used by the FBI, and they knew it was political dirt, to open a counterintelligence investigation into the other campaign. That's what people, I just can't believe that people on the other side are not furious about this. But look, I have faith in the American people. I think that a majority of Americans ultimately will make the determination that using political dirt by the FBI on the opposing campaign is a place that we won't go. And I'll tell you, I think that my colleagues here in the House, I mean, they're furious about this, as they should be.
Let me ask, you said that you believe your colleagues on the other side of the aisle have leaked intelligence at least 100 times. Is that true?
Yeah, we have 100 examples of leaks from our committee that we feel could have only come from the other side.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Sarah Carter's article tonight, because I think it's very, very interesting. She has two of them. As you look at this new memo that came out tonight, the criminal referral confirms that allies of the Clinton and Obama administration were providing Steele with what they deemed damaging information on candidate-elect Trump. And then that's where we get into, for example, Sidney Blumenthal and some other Clinton associates. Let me see if I'm understanding this correctly. Is it possible, sir, that Clinton associates were feeding information to Christopher Steele? And I refer back to, one other part of the redacted memo in the Senate where it says there's substantial evidence that Mr. Steele materially misled the FBI about a key aspect of his dossier's efforts. Is it possible that Clinton associates gave information to Christopher Steele that was then used for a salacious dossier on Hillary's opponent, that was then used to lie to the American people or mislead the American people because Steele leaked all over to the mainstream media, and then was used as the basis for a FISA? Is that possible, that some of the information came from Clinton's own people to Steele?
You're not gonna like this answer, Sean, but it's the one I have to give you. Partially why that's redacted. Senator Grassley's letter is redacted, and it's still, whatever is there is classified. We can't get into the classified nature of it. Can I read you the unredacted part? But I can. Well, what I can tell you is this: we have an active investigation into the State Department. That has been ongoing for a while now, and as soon as we can get that information out, we will, as the investigation unfolds.
I haven't been wrong yet, Congressman, in all of this. How is it possible? And this is my final question. Look, I could keep you on the air for the full hour. How is it possible that this is happening in the United States of America? That is all of this combined, that you have Russian information from apparently a known liar who has Russian paid sources, that then it's paid for by one campaign, and that's bad enough. That takes it up to another notch. So you have Russian lies propaganda paid for by one candidate. Then that paid propaganda is used to go before a FISA court. And the top people at the FBI and DOJ don't inform the court about the underlying dossier being bought and paid for by that other candidate for the very person they're trying to get a FISA memo on.
It's what happens in banana republics. It's very scary. And imagine we found out about this last March, not all of it, but we knew that the dossier was used to some degree, and it took us, as you well know, subpoenaing the DOJ and FBI, having to move close to going to contempt. It took Speaker Ryan telling them that they were basically going to be held in contempt, and finally we were able to break loose all of the documentation, and then we were able to get it out to the American people in the form of the memo that is now out and available for people to read. And I think people should go and read the memo. I really do. If your viewers have not read the memo, it's worth your time. I think it'll be very illuminating.
All right, Chairman Nunes, I believe you've done a great service. I believe it's the right thing to do. The American people need to know about all of this, because fundamentally we had an effort to undermine our election and then undermine an incoming president. Is that a fair statement? Last question.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's clear evidence of collusion, that the Democratic Party and the Hillary Clinton campaign colluded with the Russians. Okay, you don't get to hire lawyers and pretend like that didn't happen. And then it goes to what they accuse you of is what they actually were doing.
Unbelievable. All right, sir. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We'll get full reaction analysis. The great one, Mark Levin, as Hannity continues. All right, joining us now, he is the host of the upcoming Fox News show, Life, Liberty, and Levin, nationally syndicated radio talk show host, also a host on CRTV. I call him the great one. Thank me. God bless us. Look, I don't want to waste a lot of time. We now have 2 dossiers. We now have 2 memos with the new memo from Grassley's committee tonight. And this one now talks about Sid Blumenthal and other Clintonites literally feeding Steele more phony information and rationalizing this phony Russian paid-for dossier that is, number one, used first to manipulate and lie to the American people, and then used as a basis, in part, for a FISA warrant against the candidate and then an incoming president to undermine his presidency. Great one. I couldn't write a novel this bad.
And this is bad. And let me tell you a couple things here. Now we know why Schiff and the rest of them are fighting so hard. Now we know why the left-wing Praetorian Guard Democrat media are fighting so hard, trashing Nunes, me, you, and others. Let's walk through this quickly. Who are they trying to protect? Hillary Clinton. Sean, who else are they trying to protect? Barack Obama. His name never comes up, so let me help everybody with this. Loretta Lynch knew about these FISA warrants. Yates, the Deputy Attorney General. The extensions, Rob Rosenstein, now the Deputy Attorney General, he knew. FBI Director Comey, Deputy Director McCabe, Strzok, the head of counterintelligence, Page, his girlfriend. Who else would have known about these FISA applications and warrants? Well, let me tell you a little secret. These are counterintelligence efforts. You have to assume the National Security Council and the White House knew. Why would the FBI, the Justice Department, keep that from the National Security Director in the White House? Why would they keep it from the Deputy Director in the White House? So why would it be left out of the President's daily intelligence briefing, which I mentioned in March, Congress also needs to get a hold of? I am telling you, we're looking at the FBI, we're looking at the Department of Justice, and we're not looking at all at the White House. Hillary Clinton paid for a warrant. That's the easiest way we can put it. Hillary Clinton colluded with the Russians, but it appears the FBI at the senior-most levels colluded with the Russians too. Whether it was witting or unwitting, it doesn't matter. That's a fact. So the senior level of the FBI tried to interfere with this election as well. This is why it's such a big deal. Now, I know Republicans are bending over backwards saying this has nothing to do with Mueller. It has everything to do with Mueller, because it transitioned from a counterintelligence investigation into a criminal investigation after Comey, of all things, confesses to being a leaker. And Mueller is the former FBI director. Those are his people. That's his environment. He's not out there as some independent force. But I want to get back to Barack Obama. It's his FBI, his Department of Justice, his State Department, his candidate. I cannot believe for a minute that the National Security Council didn't know about this. And to show you how elaborate this is, now that more information's coming out, we haven't even gotten to the incidental collection of intelligence on people, including, by the way, Sessions when he met with and spoke to the Russian ambassador, Michael Flynn when he spoke to the Russian ambassador, the unmasking and leaking of his name, the record number of unmasking of American citizens in Trump world, and so forth and so on. And the American people have been subjected to a massive propaganda and misinformation campaign by the Clinton campaign, by the Obama administration. Let me ask you a logical question, Sean. Why would the Russians want Donald Trump to be president of the United States when they get everything they want from Hillary Clinton? Whether it's uranium, whether it's undermining our defense by cutting military spending, by refusing to secure our border. Why in the world would the Russians want Trump as opposed to Hillary Clinton?
Let me jump in for a second. So really, if we were able to get the FISA application, we don't want to get rid of sources and methods, and if we were able to make public Barack Obama's presidential daily briefing, you're betting, and I agree with you, tonight, that it would clearly show that he knew all of this was happening.
Look, they have these front guys, Brennan out there and Clapper out there, and they're propagandists out there, but they don't have Susan Rice out there and Ben Rhodes out there and Valerie Jarrett out there. Barack Obama's gone into the witness protection program. Nobody even knows where he is anymore. His name never comes up. I'm telling you that the frenzied defense of what's taken place here, it's to protect Hillary and to protect Obama. Since when has the Democrat Party supported law enforcement? They undermine the Baltimore Police Department. They undermine the Ferguson Police Department, the NYPD, the LAPD. All of a sudden, they're defending the FBI. And then they turn around and say, why are you attacking the FBI? You and I and others are defending the FBI against the rogue activity that's taken place at the most senior levels. And the leaking, we already know. Comey's a leaker, McCabe's a leaker, Strzok's a leaker, Page is a leaker. How many other leakers were coming out of the FBI? Which is how we knew on March 2nd, 5th, and 6th of last year something was wrong. We got a little bit of FISA information being leaked. We got a little bit of stuff out of the FBI about the New York Times about wiretaps. We were able to try and piece this together on your show, among others. And then it all now makes sense. This is a massive spectacle, a massive
is this the biggest scandal
corruption
in the history of this country. You're a historian.
Well, whether it is or not, I mean, the fact of the matter is, it is. Listen, not only do we need a special counsel, we need a commission. I was talking to my wife about this Friday night. Dershowitz mentioned it over the weekend. He's right. We need the criminal investigation and we need a policy investigation to come up with what we need to do. We cannot walk away from this.
All right. By the way, the Great One will be on this show every other week, you promised. And the Great One show starts in February. More Hannity after this.
When you say